You know, before Sherlock Holmes, before Poirot, before pretty much any of the great detectives we can name, there was this one case, a murder, laid out in a novel that most people have forgotten, but one that quietly wrote the rulebook for every detective story that came after it. Today, we're going to open the file on the case that really started it all.
And it begins, like so many of these stories do, with a body. But listen to the way that's written. It's not overly dramatic, is it? It's clinical, it's precise, almost forensic. Right from the jump, we're being asked to look at this not as a tragedy, but as a crime scene, through the eyes of an analyst. And that one little shift, it changes everything.
And this clinical approach is exactly why this story is so important. The novel is Anna Katharine Green's The Leavenworth Case, and get this, it was published way back in 1878. Now, to put that into perspective for you, the very first Sherlock Holmes story wouldn't even exist for another 9 years. So this book wasn't just telling a story, it was literally drawing the blueprint for an entire genre.
So, let's begin our investigation. We find ourselves in a lavish home on Fifth Avenue, where a very normal morning has just been shattered by a truly brutal discovery. Our victim is a man named Horatio Leavenworth. He's rich, he's retired, a man with a serious reputation in high society. This isn't some random street crime. This is a murder that strikes right at the heart of the city's elite. And in that world, you have to remember, secrets are a form of currency, and pretty much everyone has something to hide.
And right away, we see a technique that we just take for granted now. The police don't just guess what happened. Nope. They bring in a surgeon, basically an expert witness, who takes one look at the wound and says there's no way it could have been self-inflicted. Just like that, suicide is off the table. It's officially a homicide. And in this moment, the very seeds of forensic investigation and fiction are sown.
So, into this high-stakes world of money and murder steps a new kind of investigator. And trust me, he is not what you'd expect. And his methods are, well, they're pretty peculiar.
This is Detective Grice from the New York Police. Now, if you're picturing some swashbuckling hero or a brilliant, eccentric genius, you can forget it. He's described as quiet, totally unremarkable, almost the kind of guy who would just fade into the wallpaper. But that, right there, is his greatest strength. People underestimate him, and because they underestimate him, they talk.
This quote just perfectly captures how he works. Grice doesn't stare you down or try to intimidate you. Instead, his gaze just sort of drifts, and it lands on these random, insignificant things around you. It's like he's having a conversation with the inkstand on your desk or the button on your shirt. Can you imagine how unnerving that would be? It's brilliant, though. He gets that people can lie, but objects don't.
So armed with this very peculiar method, Detective Grice turns his attention to the Leavenworth household, a place that is practically vibrating with tension and all kinds of unspoken secrets.
At the center of it all are the two nieces who lived there. First, you have Eleanor. She tries to act poised, but you can tell she's absolutely terrified, and she eventually just faints from the pressure of all the questioning. And then there's Mary. She's the one who was publicly named as the main heiress. Her reaction? She is strangely composed, almost cold and distant. So you have to ask yourself, why is the woman who's about to inherit a massive fortune so calm, while their cousin is literally falling apart?
And the circle of suspicion, oh, it just keeps getting wider and wider. You've got Truman Harwell, the private secretary, a guy so bland he's practically invisible. There's a maid named Hannah who just vanished into thin air the very night of the murder. And then a whole new player enters the game, a handsome Englishman, Henry Clavering, who, it turns out, is secretly engaged to one of the Leavenworth girls.
Seriously, every single person in this house is a potential suspect, and it seems like every single one of them is lying about something. The real question for Detective Grice is, which of these lies are just little white lies, and which ones are meant to hide a murder?
Now, this is where the novel really breaks new ground. It stops being just about a detective's gut feeling and becomes about process, about the methodical, step-by-step collection and analysis of actual evidence.
We get to see it all laid out, just like a modern procedural. There's the official coroner's inquest, where everyone has to give testimony under oath. There's the careful cross-examination of all the witnesses, which starts to poke holes in their stories. There's an organized search for the missing maid, Hannah. And then there's the central, baffling puzzle of the crime itself. And here's a key piece of evidence: a detailed floor plan of the victim's apartment, which was included right there in the novel. I mean, today, we just call this a crime scene diagram, and it's standard procedure. But in 1878, this was absolutely revolutionary. using architecture and spatial logic to try and reconstruct the crime and figure out how a killer could have moved through the house completely unseen.
And that diagram becomes so crucial because of one baffling fact. The butler swears that on the morning the body was found, every single door and window on the lower floors was locked and bolted, from the inside. So if the killer murdered Mr. Leavenworth, how on earth did they, and for that matter the vanished maid, get out of the house?
So the pressure just keeps building. The web of lies starts to unravel. And finally, under the quiet, steady gaze of Detective Grice, the most unassuming person in the entire house begins to crack.
It's Truman Harwell, the quiet secretary, and he suddenly reveals this hidden, darker self. He describes himself as a man with a calm exterior, but one that's hiding the passions of a tiger. All of a sudden, this seemingly invisible man is the most dangerous person in the room.
And what was it that sparked this hidden passion? Mary Leavenworth. He says from the very moment he first saw her, he was just consumed by this obsessive, totally unrequited love. He describes it like a lightning flash that basically decided his entire future. He became obsessed, studying her every move, knowing all the while that she would probably never even notice him.
And then, in a final desperate plea to marry herself, the absolutely shocking motive is laid bare. He didn't do it for money, he didn't want power. He confesses that he murdered her uncle to make sure she got her inheritance, because he believed that this twisted, grandiose act of violence would finally make her see him, and maybe even love him back.
And with that, the whole puzzle just clicks into place. Harwell confesses to all of it. He's the one who shot Mr. Leavenworth. He found the maid, Hannah, who had seen something she shouldn't have, and he forced her to flee the house that night. And then, in one last brilliant act of misdirection, he bolted all the doors from the inside on his way out, creating that impossible locked-room mystery.
So the case is closed, but the story's real impact was just beginning. Let's take a look at the incredible legacy that this one novel left behind for all of us.
I mean, just think about it for a second. A detailed, legally accurate coroner's inquest, the crucial role of an expert medical testimony, the use of a crime scene diagram to analyze the physical space, the methodical cross-examination of every single witness. There's even an analysis of the pistol wound, which is an early form of ballistics. Every single one of these is now a pillar of the modern detective story, and they all appeared right here, for the very first time.
This wasn't just another mystery. It was an invention. It established a formula that was so powerful and so logical that it's been used by almost every single crime writer since. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Without the quiet observations of Detective Grice, would we even have the brilliant deductions of Sherlock Holmes?